The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Chapter 9, 10, and 11. At 9 that night, Tom and Sid were sent to bed as usual. They prayed, and Sid was soon asleep. Tom was waiting. Time passed very slowly. Little noises came out of the darkness. A cry of a far-off dog was heard in the night air and was answered by another dog. By that time, Tom was asleep. Then there came among his dreams the call of a cat. A neighbor opened a window. Tom heard this, and a minute later he was through his window. He meowed as he went. Then he jumped. Huckleberry Finn was there with his dead cat. In half an hour the boys were in the graveyard. The graveyard was on a hill, a mile and a half from the village. There was an old board fence around it. A light wind sounded in the trees, and Tom was afraid that the sound came from the spirits of the dead. The boys talked little. The time and place and the quiet were heavy on their hearts. They found the new grave and sat down under the branches of 3 big trees near it. They waited for a long time. After a while, Tom felt that he must talk. "Huck, do you believe that the dead people are pleased to have us here?" "I wish I knew." "Huck, do you think Hoss Williams hears us talking?" "His spirit hears us." "I wish I had said Mr. Williams, but all the people say Hoss." "You must be careful how you talk about dead people, Tom." There was no more talk for a while. Then Tom touched Huck's arm. "Did you hear it? There it is again. Now you hear it." The two held each other with fast beating hearts. "Tom, they're coming. What shall we do?" "I don't know. Will they see us?" "Tom, they could see in the dark, like cats. I wish I had not come." "Oh, don't be afraid. We're doing nothing. If we are completely quiet, perhaps they won't see us." "I'll try, Tom, but I'm shaking." "Listen." The sound of voices came from the far end of the graveyard. "Look, see there," said Tom. "What is it?" "It's devil fire. Oh, Tom, this is very bad." Some dark shapes came near, carrying a light. Huckleberry said, shaking more, "It is the devils. 3 of them. Tom, we're in great trouble. Can you pray?" "I will try." Tom began to pray. Please stop here and answer question 1. "Tom, they're human. That's old Muff Potter's voice. He's drunk as usual. He won't see us." "Huck, I know the other voice. It's Indian Joe." "Devils would be better than that half Indian. What do they want here?" Then the boys were quiet, because the 3 men had arrived at the new grave. "Here it is," said the third voice. In the light the boys saw the face of young Dr. Robinson. He was so near that the boys could have touched him. "Hurry, men," he said. "The moon may appear from behind the clouds." The other 2 men began opening the grave. For a while no sound was heard except the sound of their work. Then they came to the box which contained the body. They opened it and lifted the body out of the box. The moon appeared, and the dead man's face could be seen. Potter held up a knife. "Now, doctor, the thing is ready, and here it stays unless you pay us $5 more." "You have your money," the doctor said. "You and your father once sent me to jail," said Indian Joe. "5 years ago. Do you think I would forget? Now you pay." Please stop here and answer question 2. The doctor hit him suddenly, and Indian Joe fell. Potter dropped his knife. "You hit my friend," he said. He jumped at the doctor, and the 2 began fighting. Now Indian Joe was on his feet again. He picked up Potter's knife and began moving like a cat, round and around the fighters. He was watching for his chance to strike the doctor. Suddenly the doctor was free. He picked up a board and used it to strike Potter, who fell quickly to the ground. At that same moment Indian Joe saw his chance. The whole length of his knife went into the doctor's body. The doctor fell, partly on Potter, covering Potter with his blood. Clouds covered the moon, and the 2 boys ran into the darkness. When the moon appeared again, Indian Joe was looking down at the 2 men lying on the ground. The doctor made some sounds that were not possible to understand, and then after a long breath he was quiet. The Indian said, "Now that is finished." He put the knife in Potter's right hand. Then he sat down and waited. Soon Potter began to move. His hand closed on the knife. He looked at it and let it fall. Then he sat up and looked at the doctor's body. "What happened, Joe?" he said. "It's bad business," said Joe. Why did you do it? I never did it. Potter was shaking. I was drunk. I don't even remember what happened. Did I do it, Joe? I never wanted to do it. He hit you, and then you did it. But you've always been a good friend to me, Muff Potter. I won't tell. Oh, Joe, I will bless you for that as long as I live. And Potter began to weep. This is no time for weeping. You go that way, and I will go this way. Move, now. Potter started running. Joe stood watching him. He forgets his knife because he is drunk. When he remembers, he will be afraid to return for it. 2 or 3 minutes later, the dead doctor, the body from the grave, the opened box were alone under the moon. The quiet was complete again. Please stop here and answer question 3. Chapter 10. The 2 boys ran toward the village. They looked behind them often, afraid that they were being followed. After a while they came to the edge of the village. There stood an old building which was not used. They ran through the open door and fell to the ground. Huckleberry, what do you think will happen now? Well, if the doctor dies, they will hang Indian Joe. Tom spoke. Well, who will tell about it? You and I? If we did, and Indian Joe did not hang, he would kill us. I was thinking that, Huck. Let Muff Potter tell, if he's fool enough. He is usually drunk enough. Tom continued to think. Then he said, Huck, Muff Potter does not know what happened. The doctor had hit him with that board. Huck, are you sure that you won't tell? Tom, we can't tell. You know that. Indian Joe would drown us like 2 cats if we told. Tom, we must promise never to tell. It must be a strong promise with writing and blood. Please stop here and answer question 4. Tom agreed with all his heart. This idea was what must be done. It was deep and dark and fearful. This was the hour and the place to do it. He found a clean, broad piece of wood. In his pocket he found something to write with. The moon was his light. Painfully he formed the words. Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer promise they will never tell about this, and they wish they may die in their footsteps if they ever tell. Then each boy cut a finger and signed in blood, T.S. and H.F. Tom helped Huck to write his H and F. Then they made a hole in the ground near the wall of the building. They placed the piece of wood in the hole and covered it with earth. Now they were certain. Their mouths would never speak about what their eyes had seen. Please stop here and answer question 5. When Tom entered his house through his bedroom window, the night was almost gone. He took off his clothes very quietly and lay down. He believed happily that his aunt would never know that he had been away, but Sid was not asleep. The next morning his aunt gave him some food. Then she wept, and she asked him why he hurt her old heart. She wished to help him be good. She tried and tried, but she could try no more. 1,000 beatings would have been easier for Tom. He wept. He promised to be good, but he felt that she did not believe his promises. He went to school, and there the teacher beat him and Joe Harper because they had run away from school the day before. Then he went to his seat. A hard object covered in paper was waiting for him there. He opened the paper. Inside was the bright, shining ball that looked like gold that he had given to Becky Thatcher. This was too much. Now his heart was broken. Please stop here and answer question 6. Chapter 11. At noon, the whole village suddenly knew the fearful news. The story traveled quickly from man to man, group to group, house to house. The schoolteacher closed the school. The knife had been found. It was known to be Potter's knife, and Potter had been seen washing himself in a small stream in the very early morning. When seen, he had run away. All this was very strange, especially because Potter almost never washed. All the people in the town were slowly going towards the graveyard. Tom joined them. He did not wish to go, but something seemed to force him. He arrived at the fearful place and saw the scene again. It seemed like 100 years since he had been there before. A hand touched his arm. He turned. His eyes met Huckleberry's. Both looked away. Were they being watched? Please stop here and answer question 7. Now Tom began to shake because he saw Indian Joe. Then Muff Potter appeared. A few people saw him. They shouted. The crowd separated and Potter walked through. The village law officer was holding his arm. Potter's eyes showed fear. When he stood beside the dead doctor, he put his face in his hands and began to weep. "I did not do it, friends," he said. "I did not do it." "Who said that you did it?" a voice shouted. Potter lifted his face and looked around without hope. He saw Indian Joe and said, "Oh, Indian Joe, you promised me that you would never—" "Is this your knife?" It was held by the law officer for him to see. Potter began to fall. Men caught him and let him go slowly down to the ground. Then he said, "I thought that I should come and get—" He stopped shaking. Then he said, "Tell them, Joe, tell them." Indian Joe told his story. Huckleberry and Tom stood, not able to speak, and with eyes wide with fear. They expected the skies to open with a sudden storm to strike Indian Joe. But he finished the story and stood there, living and whole. Please stop here and answer question 8. During a week after this, Tom could not sleep well. One morning, Sid said, "Tom, you talk in your sleep so much that I can't sleep half the night." Tom's face became white, and he looked away. "This is bad," said Aunt Polly. "There is something on your mind, Tom. What is it?" "Nothing." But Tom's hand was shaking. He could not lift his cup. "And you say fearful things," Sid said. "Last night you said, 'It is blood, it is blood.' You said that again and again. Then you said, 'Do not hurt me, I will tell.'" "Tell what?" Aunt Polly said, "I understand. It's that killing. I dream about it also." Mary said that she also dreamed about it, and then Sid stopped talking. Slowly, Tom's mind grew quieter, and his sleep was easier. Almost every day during this bad time, Tom went to the jail window and gave Potter some small gift. Then he felt happier. The village people wanted to put Indian Joe in jail also. Like Muff Potter, he had been helping the doctor to carry away that dead body from its grave. But the people did nothing. They were afraid of Indian Joe. Please stop here and answer question 9.